Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And here's your host, Chris Cebollero.
Well, once again, it's time for the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I want to tell you, we're having a great time doing this, and the letters and the emails. I guess nobody sends letters anymore, right? So the emails that I'm getting is just amazing. I appreciate your support. I appreciate the comments about the show. And, you know, we're kind of taking those comments and those suggestions to heart, and we're trying to bring you those shows that you want to hear. And again, I'm very, very humbled by the fact that, you guys are listening. And any time that I can share my knowledge and join you on your professional development journey, it's a very, very humbling experience. So thank you very much. You know, today, I really want to kind of focus on the thought of organizational process improvement. So when we think about our jobs as leaders, of course, the most important component of what we do is taking care of our workforce. Now, a lot of times we don't think that our most important job is our workforce, but it should be our workforce. We should focus on them. We should focus on their satisfaction. We should focus on their engagement. We should focus on developing them into the best that they can be so we can get the very best out of them. But some of the job that we have to do deals with process improvement, deals with ensuring that we're doing the best job that we can with the tools that we have and the resources that we have. And sometimes that means we have to get into the process improvement stages and resources. And there's a lot of things out there. I mean, Agile's been the big one that's coming out now. And of course, Six Sigma and, Lean is a big one. And of course, Kaizen is another one. And well, today I thought it would be great to bring you a guest who's really kind of set his mark in organizational process improvement. We're going to talk with Mack Story, and I'm very, very excited. And he is the co-founder of Top Story Leadership. And I got to tell you, I think that's one of the best branding names that I've ever heard. So Mack has over 11,000 hours of experience leading hundreds of leaders and thousands of their cross-functional teams. And he's probably one of the experts when it comes to organizational process improvement. And he is the author of the Blue Collar Leadership Series. I'm going to call him a friend. Here he is all the way from the great state of Georgia, Mack Story. Mack, thanks for joining us on the show.
Hey, Chris, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And go ahead and warn you and your audience that I'm bilingual. Not to impress them, but to warn them I speak English and country.
That's right. So we will go ahead and make that out right away. We started talking before we started recording, and I say Kaizen, and how do you say it?
Kaizen.
Kaizen. So, it depends on where you are in the United States as to how you're going to pronounce that. But I really appreciate you joining. I've been following you for a while. And, anytime that, we're both in the same space of leadership development and making organizations better. And I enjoy your work, man. I really do. And to have you on the show is a really, really honor for me.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it. This Blue Collar Leadership brand, I think is very unique. It's something that's not out in the workforce. And again, I just want to thank you for allowing me to use your platform to shout my message out to the world.
And I think that the listeners are going to get a really great message today. But one of the things I want to touch on first, Mack, is that you and I share the same friend and mentor in John Maxwell. And we are part of the John Maxwell team. And anytime I have the opportunity to talk with someone who has had the experience of working with John, I really like to get their impressions, because we know that John's the number one leadership expert in the world. And regardless of what you and I know about leadership, when we sit in front of John Maxwell, we realize just how much about leadership we don't know. And, what kind of impact has he had, and what has he meant to the development of your organization?
That's right. John's been a huge part. I started out as a Covey fan and still am, and then I discovered John was actually the second leadership author I discovered, and then I dove into John's stuff so deep. And I'll tell you what he done for me. Anybody who knows Covey, Covey's a professor. He speaks a little bit higher up. John says put everything on the bottom shelf so everybody can have some. And anybody knows me, I'm only 5'7", so I can only reach the bottom shelf. I don't have a choice. But what I learned as soon as I saw John on video, when I saw Covey, I was like, I'd love to do what Covey does, but he was so squared away and proper and a little too much for me. And as soon as I saw John speaking on video, cutting up, having fun, poking fun at the low impact leaders while he was teaching leadership and telling stories and laughing and cutting up with the crowd, I said, oh, Mack Story can do that. I can do it that way. So that's the first thing he done for me was, free me up. And then I dove into his books. My number one book ever is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Covey. And John got my number 2 book, which is 5 Levels of Leadership. And those are 2 books that if you hear me talk anywhere, I may not literally say it, but I'm talking about a lot of stuff that comes from those two books.
It is kind of one of the foundations. He gives you some foundational book that it really kind of sets it on. Mine is, of course, is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That was the
Absolutely.
first book that I got into, and really kind of said, if I wanted to be a good leader, if I can follow these 21 laws, then I think I should do pretty good. Even if I only followed half of them, I think I'd do pretty good. But, I'm glad we had that opportunity. And, for the folks that are out there, certainly, we want to be able to guide you. But check into Stephen Covey and check into John Maxwell. And you shouldn't just follow one leader. You should be able to have an array of leaders that you're going to follow. But that's a whole other story. But Mack, I'm really glad that you're here because, process improvement is one of the things that we really have to think about within our organizations to make sure that we're running as efficiently and effectively as we can. So maybe just give us an overview. When we think about the lean process, how important is process improvement within our organizations?
Yeah, every company, even if they're not literally and intentionally focused on lean as a formalized process improvement tool, if you want to call it that, every company's trying to get better. And lean is simply a set of tools that allows people to formally train and develop their people to improve processes in a methodical way. And that's, you talk about those 11,000 hours, and that's mainly what I was doing, was leading 6 to 12 person teams. I show up on a Monday, and by Friday we've accomplished some amazing, unbelievable transformation, usually on the shop floor of a manufacturing facilities where most of that took place, with a group of people who were really not a team on Monday. But by Friday they had learned some stuff, and I've taught them some leadership too, and they've become a team and have actually literally physically transformed some space on the shop floor or some process. And I teach it different. So I had to bear with me for a second. Most people teach lean as 2 pillars. Toyota's kind of the lean benchmark of the world, and they teach kind of 2 pillars of lean is continuous improvement and respect for the people. When I teach it, I even flip it around, and I teach respect for the people and continuous improvement, but I don't talk about pillars. I talk about 2 foundational layers. And most companies do the easy part. They focus on the continuous improvement, and they've kind of bypassed the respect for people. They think the respect for people means, be nice to them, give them a voice, and give them a turkey at Thanksgiving and that sort of stuff. But I see respect for the people truly as leadership development of everybody at every level, helping them grow their influence 360 degrees from wherever they're at. And, as you know, that, and I learned this from John, and I know you agree with it. John teaches leadership as influence, and that's the one thing when I heard that from John the first time, it just stuck. I liked it. It's simple, and that's why I see everyone as a leader, because everyone has influence. So we need to grow and develop that influence.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100%. And that's one of the things that when we think about leadership, it's a verb. It's an action. It's not a noun. It's not a position. It's not accomplishments. It's the action that you do to serve the people who are working for you. I mean, we invite these people into our organizations, and we've got to put them at the top of our priority to make sure that we're successful as leaders. So I'm glad you kind of said that. So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, Mack, really comes from your book, Blue Collar Kazan, Leading Lean and Lean Teams. And we're going to talk about at the end of the show, like we do, how folks can get their hands on it. But one of the things that you mentioned is that as you go into organizations, you go in on a Monday, you leave on a Friday, and you kind of really focus on the process improvement aspect. But you also mentioned the fact that they may not be working as a team. So even before you get into the process improvement, I guess, cascade of making things work, really, you've got to have a good team. You've got to lead those teams as well as you're leading this organizational process. How important is that?
Yeah, it's huge. What a lot of lean experts, lean consultants, it's one of the missing pieces. And before I take you down that path, I wanted to share with you and help let you validate for me, because I know you believe the same thing I'm about to say, but I just want to make sure that, somebody like John, who considers, the world considers him a leadership expert. A lot of people consider me a leadership expert, and I always have to tell everybody what that means. If somebody is truly a leadership expert, that means they know how much they don't know about leadership. It don't mean they know everything. It means that they know how much they don't know. And people who are truly leadership experts are, once they become passionate about leadership, they become a lifetime student of leadership. And the reason I say that is because of those 2 pillars of lean. A true lean expert has to be a lifetime student of leadership. If they're not, they're missing the whole component of respect for the people. And you agree with that with the leadership expert piece, right?
Oh, of course I do. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, because when you talk about leadership or you talk about influence, one of the processes in process improvement is the fact that you need to be able to have the foresight and the conceptualization to say, I may need to adjust this process. And that really takes your influence to do that, because that it's not something that you just snap your fingers or you flip a coin and say, I'm going to change this process. But when you have that foundation of leadership, Mac, and kind of piggybacking on what you said, you're able to kind of lead and influence the fact that change may be coming. And that you're not just springing that change on the people, or maybe even you're allowing that leadership to get the suggestions from your workforce to say, we may need to change this process.
Yeah, one of the biggest things, touching on what you're talking about, the value of leadership. I mean, when I come in, I hardly do the process improvement stuff anymore. I still, everything I do is leadership, but I don't really lead the Kaizen teams anymore. But I did that, for a lot of years. But when I show up on Monday, most of the time, I mean, you can imagine any leaders listening to us today, they have a team. But could you imagine you're going to lead a team that when you show up on Monday, they don't like you. They don't like each other most of the time. They don't like change. They don't like the boss. They don't like finding out 5 minutes ago on Monday morning that they're going to be in this event all week without any notice, disrespected like that. It happens all the time. And you, and I'm talking about me, I'm saying you in general, you have to be able to go in on Monday with these people who are not necessarily a team, and they don't want to do anything most of the time you're about to do, and they don't have any respect for you as a person most of the time because they didn't like the last consultants, or they don't like how lean's being done to them instead of with them. You got to go in and build that relationship. And we talked about the 5 levels from John, and really what I do on Monday morning, if you understand the 5 levels of leadership, first thing I'm doing as soon as I get there is I'm working on level 2. I got to go build a relationship so I can move to level 3 and get results. And I'm going to talk about getting results. But what I really want to do is move to level 4 and go working on people development. And the way that I actually do that, which differs, and I call it the 20-80 rule, not the Pareto principle, but just the Mack Story 20-80 rule. I would always, if I had a day or I had 5 days or 3 days, it don't matter how much, I'm going to always put about the first 20%, not necessarily the first though, but 20% of the time I'm going to put in to personal growth and leadership development. And the reason I do that, I call it priming the pump. I'm getting these folks ready who may not be a team, who may not want to work with me, who may not want to change. I'm priming the pump. And what I mean is I'm preparing them mentally to work together and to work with me. It's kind of a lot of people would call it an art because, leadership's tough anyway. But when you walk in with a strange team on Monday that's really not a team, and by Friday you've had to deliver results in an environment where they don't have to agree. See, that a lot of people misunderstand that we got to get something done, but see, they really don't have to get anything done. If they don't really like me and buy into me as their leader for the week, they don't do anything and they're happy, and I don't get invited back anymore. And that never happened, but that's the case, that it does happen, I'm sure, with a lot of consultants. And if it's happening, they're missing the people piece. Before we can move forward on any process improvement, I've got to get them bought into me. And that's a principle you talked about, the 21 laws from John, that people buy into the leader before they buy into the leader's vision and mission. And that's what I do. And I learned it from Jim Womack, who's kind of like the guru of lean in the United States. It kind of brought the term lean to the United States, and one of his terms is lean leaders go slow to go fast, and he says traditional leaders go fast to go slow. And the traditional leaders that are on my teams, or sometimes they're not on my teams, but they're formal authority leaders, they're sticking their head in. They want us to be out on the shop floor doing something. They think all this stuff I'm doing on the front end is a big waste of time, but I know that it's not, because I'm building a relationship to go get something done.
Yeah, and I think you hit a lot of great points, in that segment there, because what you're really doing initially is, before you can add value to the organization and before you can add value to changing a process, what you're doing is you're adding value to the people who are in the room. And I had to laugh.
Exactly.
I had to laugh when you said, when you show up on Monday, they don't really want you there. Because that big word, Mac, change. Ooh, change is such a bad word. And, I giggled when you said they may not have even learned 5 minutes ago that they're going to be in this class for the whole week.
That's the truth.
No, it is the truth, because I've been in that position. I've been in organizations, and I'm big into lean and Lean Six Sigma, and I've brought those to organizations, and I have had people who have just said, I just learned about this 30 minutes ago that I was going to be in this class all week. Yeah. But, we've been on the books for 6 weeks before we even showed up in the organization.
Exactly. How disrespectful is that to that team member? Not only that he's not prepared, but he's got a job. He's not prepared to walk away from that job. And then he's got a boss who's being told by another boss, put Mack on that team this week. And then everybody all over. It gives Lean and gives me a bad name. And it starts with leadership within the organization.
Yeah, because now they come in and, like you said, they're looking at me like, who the heck is this guy? And what is he going to teach me? And I don't have time for this. And now you really have to add value to those people and grow them and give them the confidence that what you're going to teach them is going to make them better leaders. It's going to make them better workers. And it's going to make the team better. And I think you had a lot of great pearls of wisdom in that.
Yeah, one of the things I would do to quickly, depends on how rough it is on those Monday mornings, but if it was really rough and stuff like that was happening and you could just, arms crossed, there's a lot of animosity in the room and all that type stuff, they don't even know what's coming, right? They think, some of them don't even have a clue what's coming. Some of them know we're there to change something and that sort of stuff. But the way I would get most of the people to buy in quickly, and I already told the leaders, anything I say in there is going to help move us forward. And that's what y'all want me to do, help move us forward. Because I have to even tell them and prep them so that they don't misunderstand what I'm doing. But as soon as I'd go in there and I would see that and feel that, as I started talking about leadership, and within like 15 minutes of me being there, I'm telling them, if you don't like being in here, if you don't like working at this company, if you don't like your job, if you don't like anything about what's going on, you need to pay attention more than anybody. Because what I'm about to teach you is going to help you. If you learn it, will help you get a job somewhere else. And the reason I say that, and let me say, when I say that, most of the time they turn toward me. Most of the time they start listening. And really it's habit 5 from the 7 habits from Covey is seek first to understand, then be understood. And what I'm doing is I'm saying to them, I understand you. And I tell them at the same time, I say, if somebody made you come in here today and you don't want to be here, I wish I could let you go, but it ain't up to me. If you don't want to be in here and it was up to me, I'd let you go right now because I didn't come to talk to you. I come to talk to people who want to be in here. And then, and I talk to them and it really helps them see that I know how they feel. And I give them some examples because all I'm trying to do is get them to buy in. I got 5 days and I got to get started like right now and I got to get them bought in. And I also tell them, though, I say, if you buy into this and you want to leave the company, if you buy into this, the odds are you're going to end up liking this company more than you do today because they're doing this stuff. I'm here because somebody values who I am and what I'm teaching you. And you may not feel that from your leaders now, but this stuff's going to take some time to happen. So if you get involved in it and you start liking it because you want to leave the company, you still got to learn it and apply it before anybody's going to value that you know this stuff. And what'll happen is they'll actually get bought in. And I don't know if any of them's ever actually left the company. Usually what happens is if they really buy in, they want to be a part of what we're doing. They want to be connected, to me when I was coming in there. They want to be a part of the lean team. They want to be a part of helping help the company change and grow. But ultimately, I just want them to buy in. And I tell them too, if you don't want to buy in for work, buy in for your family, because this stuff I'm going to teach you, it's going to allow you to have a better relationship with your children, with your spouse, with your neighbors, your friends, your family. And if you learn this stuff internally, anywhere you go, you're going to apply it. So I would tell them, I don't care why you learn it. I just want you to want to learn it. And I'm here to help you learn it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm building a relationship. They're starting to see I care about them as a person.
I think you hit the nail right on the head in so many things. And, people do come in that room and they are kind of put off that they're there. And one of the things that as you start to teach them is to say the organization is investing in you because they believe in you. Absolutely. And when change comes, they want you to be the change agent. They want you to be the person who's at the front lines of making the organization better. And as you say, once you get to, get them to buy in and see that the value that they really have, because a lot of times these people, when you talked about they may not like their job or, they may be looking for another job. And, Gallup tells us that up to 73% of our workforce is either disengaged or actively disengaged. And Absolutely. There's got to be some of the people who are sitting in that room. But now what you're giving them is you're giving them the tools to finally make the difference that they don't feel that the organization wants to make. And I think that that's really, really important. And, it's true that they can use process improvement methodologies, not just at work, but they could use them in the developing of their relationships and developing of stakeholders and developing of peers in understanding their kids and making a process improvement really when it comes to parenting. And we certainly don't want to put the business connection into parenting because it's a whole science within itself. But as I became versed in process improvement, I found myself interacting differently with my friends and family. And I really like how you put the cherry on that cake.
Yeah, I mean, principles and practices. We talk about it in leadership, and they're the same with lean. And I'll give you an example with lean. Like I said, Toyota's the world's benchmark. My wheelhouse is like if I had a choice relative to lean process improvement, I love going into companies that had never even really heard of it. They're brand new to it. And the reason I like to do that is because not only do I have to teach in leadership, but I got to teach them about process improvement, get them to buy into that as well. And I love changing the way people think. So I like to go in companies that don't know anything about lean, that have never formally addressed it. But the one thing that in a lot of companies, that don't build cars, they may make chairs or they make something completely different. I mean, it does not even matter what it is. They talk about what they see at Toyota won't work here. They say what Toyota does won't work here. And what I have to teach them is the difference between principles and practices. What they see Toyota doing is the practice. What allowed Toyota to do what they're doing underneath is the principle. And that's what I tell them. I'm going to teach you the principles. These principles apply everywhere. They apply at the dentist office. They apply when I go mow my lawn, so that I got the blade over the grass that hadn't been cut yet most of the time. The principle of process improvement applies everywhere. The practice is different. And it's the same way with leadership. Like John teaches, never tell a story without making a point, never make a point without telling a story. What he's saying is never share a principle without sharing a practice, and never share a practice without telling a principle. Because leadership, there's principles, but then there's thousands of ways to apply the principle, but the underlying principle is what's the most important relative to continuous improvement, process improvement, or leadership.
And I have to agree with you 100%. Mac, one of the things that we wanted to do with this show is really just kind of introduce the process improvement, topic. And there's just so much to talk about that we weren't going to get into the particulars of process improvement. But I'd like to have you come back. I'd like you to be a regular staple on the show. I'd really like to kind of break down the Blue Collar Kazan book that you've authored and really kind of talk a little bit about process improvement. And then maybe when that's done, we can get into your Blue Collar Leadership series, because I'm a fan of it. And I think that there's a lot of people who are at the blue collar level that may think the science of leadership isn't for them. But I got to tell you, the way that you present it really gives everyone the opportunity to be an expert in the influence of other people, or what we like to define leadership as influence. And I think that your methodology is really good for those frontline people.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. The Blue Collar Leadership series, Blue Collar Leadership is really a book on how to lead yourself well, and I wrote it for the entry-level people, but it applies to every person on the planet. And then Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision is a book on how to lead others well, and I wrote it really for formal authority people or those aspiring to a formal authority position. And then Blue Collar Kaizen, which is really a book about how to lead teams well. And again, it's in the blue collar context. That's the practice piece of it. All the principles are leadership principles. They apply to anyone. I had actually on Blue Collar Leadership, I had the global director of people excellence at Campbell Soup, who reports to one of the presidents of Campbell Soup, $8 billion Campbell Soup. He read Blue Collar Leadership, and he was actually doing some training shortly after that at the headquarters of Campbell Soup. And he told me he took that Blue Collar Leadership book in there and held it up, and I think it was 49 white-collar leaders at the Campbell Soup headquarters. He held that book up and said, every one of you in this room need to read this book. And I'm just sharing that story because it's what you're talking about. This stuff is powerful for everybody, but it's really, really powerful for the blue-collar industry because there's really nothing. Most leadership books, as you know, are really catered toward the white-collar, upper-level, positional type people. And I want to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and I want to put something out there for folks like I used to be, because I started on the front lines and I want to of manufacturing and served in the blue collar workforce basically my whole career. And I know there's nothing for them. I don't think there's anything like these 3 books out there. I think you can go on Amazon and search up all you want, and there's nothing like these 3 books out there.
Yeah, and I think it's really a great testament to the work that you've done and where you've come from, as well as the Top Story brand. I love it. So, as we're going to talk about Blue Collar Kazan, if folks want to do a couple things, if they want to find the book, Mac, how can they do that? Secondly, if they want to engage with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, if they're looking for the book or any of this blue collar series stuff of mine, they can actually go to bluecollarleadership.com. There's actually these 3 books, and then my wife and I have 19 books. I put one of the other books that we actually co-wrote called Change Happens: Leading Yourself and Others Through Change, because it fits very well with my blue collar content. So bluecollarleadership.com actually has all 4 of these books, the 3 blue collar books plus Change Happens, on there, and you can learn about them. You can actually order them from us. They'll be signed if you order them there, or you can go to Amazon and find them. But on the Blue Collar Leadership site, there's also a video series, little short. Usually, most of them are 3-minute videos. Some of them go up to 8 minutes, but they're little video series that where I talk about these books, and you can access that right there on the site. Links you to my YouTube channel. And these little books are written for people like me. I read every day, but I don't like to read. But they're 30 chapters, 3 pages per chapter. So they're very easy read. You can read a chapter in 7 minutes. They're great for leading teams through workbook studies. 30 chapters, go through 30 days or 30 weeks. And anyone wants to find me, they can go to bluecollarleadership.com and go to the contact. My actual phone number to my cell phone is at the top of the page. And I'll give it to your audience right now, 334-728 4143. That's the cell phone that hangs on my side. It don't mean I can answer it, but it means you can get to me and leave me a message, and I'll get back with you as soon as possible.
And there is a true definition of leadership, is that you're available to the people who are fans, people who want to be able to learn your practices. Mack, I got to tell you, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to come and chat with the listeners of the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, and I look forward to having you back real soon.
Me too. It was a pleasure, and thank you to your audience for listening in today.
I got to tell you, everybody out there, process improvement is something that leaders have to do. And even if you're a member of the workforce, learn about process improvement, because the value that you have as a member of the workforce, that's a concept that you can bring forward that could make you a change agent. So one of the things I want to encourage you on is learn about process improvement. Certainly check out Mack's books. Until next time, this is Chris Saballero, and I look forward to chatting with everyone real soon.
Thank you for joining us. The Ultimate Leadership Podcast is a production of chrissaballero.com. You can interact with us by email at ultimateleadership16@gmail.com. All rights reserved.